Welcome to the CHCI Leadership Conference Plenary Session, 21st Century Technology and Innovation in American Energy. We are grateful to our sponsors, American Petroleum Institute, PECO, an Exelon company, Shell, and American Gas Association. Our panel chair for today's session is Senator Ben Lujan, representing New Mexico. He serves on the Committee on Commerce, Science, and Transportation, the Committee on Health, Education, Labor, and Pensions, HELP, the Committee on Agriculture, Nutrition, and Forestry, the Committee on Indian Affairs, and the Committee on the Budget. We will also hear welcoming remarks from Karen Harbert, President and CEO of the American Gas Association. AGA represents more than 200 local energy utility companies that deliver natural gas to 178 million Americans nationwide. Our moderator for today's panel conversation is Leslie Genterossimi, the Managing Director of the Energy Project at the Bipartisan Policy Center. She brings over 10 years policy experience at the state and federal levels, including with the Oregon Department of Energy and the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency. And now, please welcome our opening remarks speaker, Senator Ben Lujan.
Hello, Senator Ben Lujan here. It's great to be with you for this year's CHCI Leadership Conference. I'm disappointed that I can't join you in person, but I'm proud to speak to a group of such accomplished individuals. Let me begin by saying your leadership is appreciated more than ever during this pandemic, and I want to thank CHCI for hosting this event. It's an honor to share a few words on the importance of innovation to protect our planet and address the climate crisis. Globally, temperatures are rising, natural disasters are becoming more destructive, and climate change is impacting our daily lives. In New Mexico, we've been on the front lines of this crisis. Hotter and drier summers have led to severe drought that has devastated our state's agricultural communities. New Mexicans deserve serious, thoughtful solutions on climate change. That's why in Congress, I've pushed for legislation that acts on climate, promotes sustainable energy, supports our centers of innovation, and create good-paying jobs. We need big, bold leadership to build a clean energy economy and protect our planet for future generations. I know that you're allies in that fight. Let's all work together to continue seeing historic advances in the clean energy innovation that we've all been working towards. Again, I thank you all for the opportunity to share a few words, and I want to express how proud I am to see young leaders bringing this issue to the forefront. You are all truly making a difference. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Karen Harbert, President and CEO of the American Gas Association. Natural gas utilities deliver essential energy every day to communities all across our country. In fact, 180 million Americans use natural gas every day in their homes, as do 5.5 million businesses, 24/7, 365. And I bet you didn't know natural gas is so affordable. In fact, the U.S. Department of Energy says natural gas costs only 1/3 as much as electricity and is half as expensive as heating oil and propane. So every American family that uses natural gas at home saves $880 every year. That's real money for real people to spend on real needs like groceries, rent, medicine. And we employ a lot of really good people. 4.1 million Americans work in the natural gas utility industry. Good paying jobs, frontline jobs, who were deemed essential at the start of this pandemic. And natural gas is there when you need it most. When brutal cold weather hit in February in Texas, natural gas services to homes and businesses remained steady. In last month's Hurricane Ida, our members in the region reported that all systems were performing as designed. And natural gas will be an essential part of our clean energy future. We're committed to continuing to reduce emissions, invest in our infrastructure, invest in innovation, so that we can continue to maintain reliable, resilient, and affordable energy choices for our customers. It is a real pleasure and an honor for the American Gas Association to be part of this Congressional Hispanic Caucus Institute 2021 Leadership Conference. Enjoy, and thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Leslie Genterossimi, Managing Director of the Energy Program at the Bipartisan Policy Center, and I'm so honored to be here today to help lead this important discussion. Just wanted to thank our opening speakers for their remarks and setting the tone for this conversation. And thanks to our conference host, CHCI. We at the Bipartisan Policy Center couldn't agree more with the need to focus attention on this critical topic. And our energy program is focused on developing pragmatic, evidence-based energy and climate policies to achieve meaningful progress to a low-carbon future. And so there's no doubt that energy innovation, technology, and particularly digital technologies are critical underpinnings to a modern economy. So I'm really delighted to be joined by three experts on this topic, and we will introduce our panelists. First, please welcome Amy Travieso-Loving, the Senior Director of Federal Affairs at the American Petroleum Institute. Amy formerly served as Chief of Staff to Congressman Henry Cuellar from Texas, and API represents all segments of America's natural gas and oil industry, which supports more than 10 million US jobs. Welcome, Amy.
Thank you, Leslie. I'm excited to be part of this panel. Thank you for having me.
Fantastic. Next, let's welcome Myra Bergman, the Vice President of Communications for PECO. Myra is responsible for the development and execution of PECO's strategic communications programs, including internal and external communications, media relations, social media, and advertising. Headquartered in Philadelphia, PECO is Pennsylvania's largest electric and natural gas utility. So welcome.
Thank you, Leslie, for having me.
And then finally, I am pleased to introduce Aura Cuellar, Vice President of Energy Transition for Shell. An environmental engineer turned business leader, Aura is determined to lead the energy industry through a transformation toward more sustainable business practices and lower carbon energy solutions. Welcome.
Thank you, Leslie. Glad to be here.
All right, well, participants in our panel today, please feel free to tweet your comments about this session at hashtag CHCIHHM21. And we'd love to see what questions you have for our panelists today. So definitely type your questions, get them ready to go to put in the chat box. So I would love to just kick off this conversation hearing from all of you because more and more we are just seeing how integral to our daily lives digital technologies have become. So to what extent are you seeing how this has percolated through the energy sector and in your industries in particular? And so Amy, I'll start with you, please.
Thank you, Leslie. Well, as you mentioned, API represents all segments of America's natural gas and oil industry. The industry supports more than 11 million US jobs, and it's a top focus for API and our members to promote safety across all aspects of the industry. And whether the industry is tackling safety and security in industry operations or critical infrastructure, cybersecurity, or achieving a carbon reduction in our production, in our efforts, all of this is being achieved by API member companies through advances in technology and innovation. But more importantly, advancing technologies that have a proven track record to reach the largest scale and to achieve the best results at a cost-effective manner for not only the industry players, but also for American consumers. These advances in technology are happening right now, and we are very excited to be a part of the conversation and part of the dialogue to make sure that at the state, local, and federal level, we're achieving the greatest success in our innovation and technology together in the public and private sector.
Thanks, Amy. Myra, tell me a little bit about where you're coming from in the industry and how technology plays into that.
Yeah, for sure. So I represent PECO, which is part of 6 excellent utilities, and technology is, really the driver to help us achieve a clean energy future. We have a number of investments in infrastructure, in modernizing the grid, modernizing our natural gas infrastructure to get us to that, zero emissions goal by 2050. So technology will plays an important role now. We have specific technologies that are helping us achieve that goal, but technology that doesn't even exist today will be really what takes us to a zero emissions future by 2050. So the role of technology is not only helping us address, the clean energy today, but it will be critical to get us to that future in 2050.
Thank you so much, Aura. And I would love to hear a little about how you're seeing technological change. Do you feel like it's been incremental? Is it transformational? How would you characterize this from your standpoint?
So certainly, digital technologies are transformational, and I believe they are changing the world in ways that are unimaginable, even from a few years ago. So digital technologies are at the heart of Shell's Powering Progress strategy, which is our strategy to take us to a low carbon energy future. And with that, we are embracing and utilizing all technologies from AI to data analytics to help us shape our business and our industry. Maybe a good example to elaborate on is our sonar company, is a power storage company, uses data to be able to transfer information from our solar panels to be able to help customers measure what needs to be, how it needs to be changed based on the weather or the prices conditions. This is just one example of how it's absolutely transforming our industry.
Definitely, it's a great example. Amy, just to follow up on that, what are your expectations kind of for how the pace of change might accelerate, or would it stay the same? What's your view on kind of the next couple of years for technology in your industry?
Oh, that's a great question, Leslie. Our perspective is there is a role for both the private sector and the government. We feel that the private sector should be the leader in innovating and commercializing new technologies. And that's happening within our membership every day, happening active, just as Aura mentioned. The government also has a unique role and a historic role to encourage and support the early stages of pre-commercial development and basic science and technology. Where the future will be in 5 to 10 years and how it'll impact consumers. I think, there's a lot of different factors that we are monitoring. We do hope that U.S. policymakers are innovating and encouraging and supporting our industry through policies that are helping to support, innovate, and to help us continue our efforts in our technology innovation, whether we're developing methane reduction technologies or whether our industry is working to deploy new carbon reduction technologies. The future will be shaped by how U.S. policymakers either aid and support that initiative.
Definitely. Well, I'd love to jump more into policy, given that that's what I do day in, day out. So, what, Myra, are you thinking about when it comes to policies to help, your industry and your company in particular, thinking through, the impetus to help address climate change, to respond to the varying extreme weather events that we're seeing, increasing, the impacts to the electric and natural gas industry?
Sure. There's important policy that is now in the works and, at the House that we support just wholeheartedly, because we know that policy is the avenue for us to get to infrastructure that is capable of supporting a clean energy future. It not only enabling us to service our customers and our businesses in the area today, but also getting to a future that is electrified, that is solar, that is more accessible and more affordable for all communities, including underserved communities. So, we support bipartisan policies that are helping us achieve our goals. And, that policy and technology together is really what the formula that will get us there by, 2050, which is when we plan to achieve our zero operations driven emissions goal.
That's great. And Ara, what role do you see for federal policy or even state policies to help in meeting Shell's goals?
Yeah, thanks, Leslie. So certainly Shell believes that a comprehensive approach from all society members to address climate issues is what is required. So Shell fully supports the Paris Agreement and the need for the whole society to transition to a low carbon energy future. I think specifically what policy, maybe just to give an example, Shell certainly supports carbon pricing and believe that this is an essential policy to help level the playing field and help all society move faster to a low carbon future. This type of policy will be essential to help reallocate important resources such as capital that would allow us to develop technologies faster and allow us to continue to build the infrastructure required to implement at a scale many of these technologies. Like it was mentioned by Myra, a very important policy is being developed at the moment at the Congress, and we absolutely support a policy framework that is comprehensive, that includes the infrastructure planning that is required to use and deploy this technology in a way that can help everyone in the country and the world.
Yeah, that's great. And Amy, what types of things are you thinking about in terms of how policy can support research and innovation in technology? Is there a role here, for federal government to help accelerate some of the innovations and the breakthroughs that are needed?
Absolutely. Our member companies and our membership is taking an internal look in how we can lead and how we can work with our, public and private sector, to achieve these goals. API recently rolled out the API Climate Action Framework, and it is a framework that lays out what the government can do. It also highlights what our industry players are already currently doing, and what policies will enable industry efforts to ensure that we're able to deliver energy and at the same time reduce emissions. So we would like to work with our policy and our US policymakers in tandem, and for them to look into where our company is leading and make sure that we are promoting those innovations, not stifling them, allow us to develop and deploy some of the technologies that we're already creating. These member companies are already putting a lot of money and investing in R&D. We want to make sure that we're not doing anything to stifle those monies that they're putting in for investments in innovation.
Yeah, Myra, same question. I'd love to hear more on kind of how you're looking at the R&D space, the need for innovation.
Yeah, let me just back up for a second and talk about, as an essential business, what we've seen in the past decade or so. And, we are truly feeling the effects of climate change. We recently, in the past decade, we saw 6 of the top 10 storms hit our region here in Philadelphia in the last decade. I mean, that is a stat that just keeps, becoming more apparent, that severe weather, very damaging weather is continuing to take place in our region. And as an essential business, it's never been so important for us to maintain, a level of service for our communities and our customers, ensuring that throughout this global pandemic, they have access to electricity and natural gas. So, we think about that as the background for, technology, and we think about that as we embark on significant efforts to address climate change and to ensure that we provide reliable and accessible services to the Philadelphia region. So we are investing about $6 billion during the next 5 years across our electric and natural gas systems to really modernize our infrastructure and minimize or prevent the number of outages, to modernize the electric grid, to modernize the natural gas distribution system. And that is really our goal. The technology that will get us there includes, more electrification of transportation, more solar, more access to these services by more communities. We're looking at equity and access as well as we think about a clean energy future.
Definitely. And I love what you're saying on those kind of three keys of reliable, affordable, and low carbon and clean energy is so important for this economy and for the transition to our cleaner energy future. And so, Ara, do you have thoughts on what technologies have really been key for Shell and kind of positioning industry for this future and the low carbon goals that you've set?
Absolutely. So maybe for a little bit of context setting within Shell specifically, so Shell announced our ambition to be a net zero energy business by 2050 or sooner, in step with society. And today, there is absolutely a lot of technologies being deployed and utilized to help us in that journey. And this includes alternative fuels, EV, all our power offerings such as onshore or offshore wind, storage, batteries. But what is, I think, very important to recognize is that this still leaves a tremendous amount of room for developing of new technologies, specifically to address those harder to abate sectors. So sectors that require, in general, really high temperatures for heating. And new technologies need to continue to develop to help us address those changes that need to happen in our society. An example of a current technology that is being used in Shell is a carbon capture, utilization, and storage, so CCUS. So a good example is our project Quest in Alberta, Canada, where about 5 years ago it was started up, and currently our CCUS plant stores over 4 million tons of CO2. And CCUS is basically a combination of technologies that allows us to capture carbon and put them underground in a safe manner. And I think this is an example of technologies that are being used, but continue to be developed and taken broader at a scale throughout all our country in order to help us all achieve our goal of moving to a lower carbon energy system.
Definitely. Amy, I saw you nodding there on the CCUS. Any follow-ups on that?
Yes, our member companies would agree. I want to echo everything Ara said. Obviously CCUS is an important step to reducing emissions, and we feel it's the way and the pathway for a cleaner energy future across the economy. Our member companies are also utilizing advances in hydrogen technology. There is new, and increasingly research about how it is a pathway to achieve some of the global climate goals that we're working towards. And there's definitely a path through hydrogen technology advancement. There's a lot of technology being utilized and innovated in our industry sector to reduce emissions when it relates to methane. API members, we support the direct regulation of new and existing sources of methane. And our member companies are leading the way to measure and to reduce those emissions, to monitor it through new advances. And we're already seeing great progress in that. In the last, maybe from 2011 to about 2018, there was a 70% reduction in emissions in the largest producing basins, which is great. That's all industry led. And we know that progress will only continue to grow.
Yeah, that's really great. And, thinking about, we've talked a lot about the different technologies, how they're deployed across different, sectors of the energy economy. But, when we're thinking about the benefits of transitioning to these new forms, technologies, deploying digital, advancements, I think we should also talk about who benefits from these changes. And equity is mentioned already a couple of times, but would love to hear more, Myra, about how do you think that equity considerations should play into how, energy companies are developing and then also implementing new technologies, especially as, from the perspective of the customer.
It's something that we discuss often as we're thinking about, how to achieve that clean energy future and who has access to those new technologies and how to ensure that the technology, as I said, is affordable, is available. We look at underserved communities and make sure that we are accounting for, accessibility and equity and access to for all of them. it is part of our planning process. It is part of what policy we can support, and the role that policy can play to ensure access and equity to new energy sources. We also think about, as a utility, our customers and our small businesses, and are thinking about how to manage their energy consumption more efficiently. So some of the innovations and technologies that we have deployed in the past enable those end users, those customers to manage their their energy consumption more, in a smart way, so they can take steps and actions to reduce their own energy usage. And things like smart meters or modernizing and digitalizing the customer experience all have to do with more information to help you make smarter decisions, and that also ensures equal access to those digital tools for all of our communities, not just one.
Definitely. So just a quick follow-up on that then, is education of the customer and how these technologies can be beneficial to them, is that part of what your focus is on?
Definitely education. A lot of that is done through our community partners, our engagement in the community. Sometimes we think about, for this audience specifically, multi-language access to those resources and that information is key. That's part of it. And then just we're thinking a lot about the actual experience of a customer who is, in our territory. How easy is it to access their usage information? How do you plan for a solar installation? How do you think about, whether or not it's economical to get an electric vehicle? All of those tools are available, and they're just, tools to help you ensure access to those new cleaner energy choices.
That's great. Aura, how are you all thinking about some of these energy access issues and the equity components of kind of how you interact with the community?
So absolutely, community engagement and equity is at the heart of what Shell does, not just in the United States, but globally. If you think of what it will take for us to achieve a net zero emissions by 2050, which is less than 30 years, it's going to take every member of our communities to be part of that journey. I think the unfortunate truth is that low-income individuals normally have a higher share of energy cost. So what we must make sure that we do as we transition in our system is make sure that they are not disproportionately affected. And I do believe there are things that we can do, certainly as a company and as society, to support equity in the transition. And some of those include reducing the cost of the transition to impact low-income individuals or low-income families, retraining opportunities, making sure that they can thrive as we go into low-carbon industry, and supporting the regions that are currently more on the traditional energy sectors to make sure that they can also transition in a fair and equitable way.
Yeah, definitely. So for our audience members, just wanted to remind everyone that the Q&A portion of our session is coming up very soon. So please enter your questions into the chat feature and we will get to those very soon. But Amy, I also wanted to touch base with you on this benefits question. And we all know, we've just heard a couple of stats earlier on in our session about how the energy sector provides benefits through both employment and career opportunities. So I'd be curious to hear from your perspective, how do you think the workforce of today has had to adapt to this kind of digital transformation, and what are you thinking in terms of diversity and equity in the workforce?
That's a great question, and API is looking at it kind of in two pillars. One aspect is we know that we need to achieve, in order to achieve our goals of safety, security, and climate-friendly policies, that's only going to be advanced through science and technology. We also know that science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, so STEM education, is critical for our jobs and for our industry sector to continue to reach those goals. API thinks there's great opportunities to invest, and we have been investing. Our member companies are putting money through K through 12 Title I, which is predominantly communities of color schools, and making sure that there's STEM career opportunities for the Latino community, for the African American community, for the minority communities throughout this country. API is also very proud of the workforce and the opportunities that our industry provides. There was a recent study that API conducted that focused predominantly on minority and female employment in the oil, natural gas, and petrochemical industries. And it took a big picture look at analyzing labor market and trends and trying to kind of see where the future of our industry will go. I think they projected it out towards 2035. And research shows with the growing energy demand, there's opportunities for an increase in about 1.3 million new jobs by 2025, just in our energy sector alone. 38% of those new jobs are projected to be filled by Latinos and African Americans by this 3035 benchmark. And what kind of jobs will those create? Two buckets. There will be opportunities for management and professional fields. And there's also going to be an increase in vocational jobs that those who do not have a higher education or higher diploma, or are looking to put that on, pursue that education in a later time, can enter the workforce with a great paying job in the energy sector in states like Texas, New Mexico, Colorado, heavy energy production states. The average salary for the state compared to the average salary in the oil and natural gas sector, our energy production jobs are at a rate of almost 120% higher than the average salary. That's for Texas. New Mexico energy jobs are 103% higher than the average New Mexico salary. A state like Colorado, you'll see 112% higher salary in the oil and gas sector than in the average, just general Colorado state salary. So we are proud that these jobs are benefiting, communities of color and creating opportunities from all sectors, all education levels.
That's great to hear. That's a really interesting report that everyone should go download. Myra, any thoughts on the workforce question?
Yeah, for sure. And I want to follow up. I don't have all the numbers that Amy just shared with us, but we do know that, some of the jobs at the utilities, line workers, natural gas mechanics, are life-altering jobs. I mean, if you can break through the industry and, acquire one of those jobs, you will have a long and fruitful career here. So, we recognize that there needs to be, doors that open for those in communities that are underserved, communities of color, maybe those who don't see themselves in these jobs. And we have launched a number of workforce development initiatives in coordination with our community partners that really open the door for these folks to see themselves in these very, life-altering jobs. As I said, we're providing them with a very clear path, training, mentorship, and really ensuring that they not only, get the job, but first of all, know that these jobs exist, get the job, and also help them navigate the organizational structures that are necessary to be successful in these jobs. So we're very proud of that work. Our community team is very engaged with a number of community partners who are promoting these jobs, providing access to application processes for the jobs, and then we take it from here. We make sure that they have what they need to succeed.
That's fantastic. We are now getting questions rolling in from our audience, but I wanted to give you one opportunity to say anything on the workforce question.
Yeah, thank you, Leslie. So I may be building on what Myra and Amy have shared. So maybe I'll start by saying the energy industry has been a phenomenal place to be part of, and in my opinion, it will absolutely continue to be. I think it's important when it comes to the workforce that we recognize that the skills and competencies that are required, especially in the transition technologies, are many of the same skill sets that the current technologies or more traditional technologies use. So if you think about construction, if you think about project management, process safety, those are still competencies and skills that are extremely relevant as we transition to a low carbon energy system. I think that maybe one more point, I think it's important to reflect that the people who are working on the new technologies and in the transition today are the same people that a few years ago were still working on the traditional energy industry. I'll quite frankly think of myself where I have spent a lot of my time in refinery and chemical plants, and I am now at the core of energy transition. Maybe one last distinction to make is that in Shell, we continue to support empowering our employees. But I think it's really important to recognize that it's not just about getting a new skill set, new competencies, or just new, more titles, but it's more about a cultural mindset, about embracing a new ways of working and embracing a world that continues to develop and transition to a low energy carbon future.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And I feel like as a panel here, we should reflect on the fact that this is just coincidentally a very women in energy, kind of featured panel. It's really exciting, for me to be a part of this as well. So, the points that were made by all of you about just how do you see yourself in an energy workforce or, contributing to the energy transition? I think that's so important, especially for young people who are thinking about a career in climate or energy, and it's so important to have, that representation. So, just excited to be a part of this conversation. And I think we are going to take the first question now from our audience, which is about green technologies. So they're in demand, but the question is about they're still kind of expensive. So can you reflect a little bit on the kind of cost angle here? How do we build this infrastructure that's necessary to address climate change, but do it in a way that's clean, safe, and affordable for all Americans? And I will
I'll be glad to comment
first.
Oh, Orange, do you want to go first?
Go ahead, Amy.
Go ahead.
Oh, you can probably speak to it much better. I'll defer to you.
I'll take it. So, the first thing that comes to my mind is to address cost, we need to really think about how to do things more efficient, faster, in different ways. And the word that comes to my mind is collaboration, right? And every part of our industry has expertise and different sets of knowledge and skills that can be probably leveraged by other partners. I think collaboration is one of the key forefront pillars that Shell is trying to really keep in mind as we transition to a low carbon future. An example that I would like to give you is in 2020, Shell and Microsoft formed a strategic alliance. Shell is providing fuels and energy to Microsoft to achieve their goal of being a net zero company by 2025. Microsoft is supporting Shell by helping us develop digital tools to support our customers to transition through the decarbonization journey. I think this piece about collaboration is essential, and it will help us to get through these very challenging cost dilemmas that we are all facing.
Yeah, and Myra, as a utility, how do you think about customer costs in protecting customers, through this energy transition?
It's for us, it's about continuing to invest in new technology that can make our, clean energy options more affordable. We think about, how to get electrification of transportation to be more mainstream. How do we get solar to be more affordable? What are the processes and the investments that we can make so it becomes mainstream and not something that's cost prohibitive? We also rely on policy and conversations with policymakers to ensure that they understand that, solar, affordable solar or affordable electrification is part of the future, and how do we help them, get to that future through technology development, investment, and policy. I think it's a combination of the three.
Yeah, and as a follow-on, Amy, we, kind of along these same lines of customer protection, but how do we think about, our need to move to a lower carbon energy future, but not penalize those who are dependent on the more traditional energy sources, especially those who are low income?
I think that's a very great point. Just as you said, that's something that needs to be echoed and understood by industry and policymakers. So as we are moving towards a carbon reduced production and a new energy future, a cleaner future, there is still going to be a reliance on traditional energy sources. There isn't going to be just an on and off switch where everything is going to be electric and there's going to be no more need for traditional sources of energy. We need to make sure that we keep that top of mind in U.S. policymakers, that as we transition, we don't penalize or prohibit the production of traditional energy. As we're moving towards solar, as we're moving towards renewable, let's still make sure that we are producing natural gas, that we're able to fuel vehicles as we're getting to a better, we're producing cleaner fuel in the U.S. Let's make sure that we're doing this smartly, at different stages, thinking through the process, working with the industry. All of our companies, all of our members are filled.
Oh, I think we got a little frozen screen there. So I may jump over to the next question, which is, we talked a bit about federal policy and other kind of policy levers, but the audience wants to know, what role can local governments do to push for more affordable clean energy while also enhancing reliability? So Myra, would you take that one?
Yes, I think they obviously, local government, state government have a role to play. And we're in ongoing conversations with, different policymakers and officials here in Pennsylvania about, the Clean Energy Transportation Infrastructure Act, for example, which would establish a path for electrification. We're talking about building forward Pennsylvania's Energy Infrastructure Act. There's a lot that is in the works. I think is the conversation needs to continue to be at federal, state, local level, because that, as I said, is the combination of technology, investment, and policy that really is going to help us get to our path to clean goal, which is zero emissions by 2050.
Definitely. And Aura, any thoughts on kind of the local angle, and in particular, we also have a question about electric vehicles. Like how more local can you get, and how do we get the infrastructure in place, to help build out the charging stations and do everything needed for the transportation side?
Yeah, I think that's an excellent example of why local engagements of the government, of the community, of the industry are so important, not just at the federal level, but really at the city level, at the small scale, because there are certainly parts of our transition to a lower carbon future that really need to be localized. So I believe that, first of all, it is essential to have an open dialogue to identify what are the needs, and also what are the specific elements that might be or the specific dilemmas that each city, for example, needs to face to transition to, for example, more use of electric vehicles in our country. Shell has set up a group that is specifically focused on city solutions, as an example, and our intent is specifically to figure out how, in a very localized manner, be able to engage with our customers, our communities, our local government officials, to help bit by bit transition to a new, cleaner energy system.
That's great. Amy, welcome back. Can you hear us?
Thank you. Yes. Sorry about that.
Perfect. Well, the next question, I think I would love for you to answer, because it's all about cybersecurity, and we know that there was a fuel supply cyber incident, not in the not too distant past, and so from cybersecurity to increasing effects of climate change. The audience wants to know, where can we make these investments to ensure a better and safer energy infrastructure?
Well, our member companies are really leading the way in this effort. They are the ones who are making progress. They are responding to situations like what happened, a couple months ago, and they're the ones that are really leading the way. The private sector is putting a lot of resources and money into protecting their systems, protecting critical infrastructure. And so the R&D that these companies are doing in leading the way is tremendous. And from API's perspective, we applaud how much progress they are making in the leadership that they are achieving to protect our critical infrastructure. And we are hoping to advance and highlight this to our U.S. policymakers to make sure that we are supporting our companies and our brain trusts to continue to grow and protect it. Obviously, we saw what happens when an attack can shut off our critical infrastructure, and our industry partners are collaborating, working together, and working with our Homeland Security, TSA, and other law enforcement to make sure that they are on top of their game, and they are leading the way.
Thank you. And I think cybersecurity is just such an important and probably growing issue that I would love to hear also from Myra, your perspective on the utility side of things. What sorts of issue areas are you looking at in regards to cybersecurity?
Yeah, and I talked a lot about infrastructure investment in terms of protecting the infrastructure that we have in place from severe weather events. We also invest to protect our infrastructure from aging and updating and getting us to that ability to have a cleaner future. But cybersecurity is part of that equation as well. We are as we are as focused on ensuring the cybersecurity of our assets as we are of ensuring the security of our infrastructure when storm or bad weather really hits the region. So it's part of the equation across the Exelon utilities. We're very focused on cybersecurity, and we will continue to be, and that is part of our investment plan for the next several decades.
That's great. Aura, anything to add on cyber?
I would say, what comes to my mind is safety has always been at the core of Shell's business model, right? Our social responsibility to our own employees, to our local communities, to our customers is essential. And cybersecurity is an integral part of protecting the energy system, not just the energy system that Shell directly contributes to, but also the entire infrastructure of it. And therefore, just like it was elaborated by Amy and Myra, cybersecurity is in the top of the agenda for Shell. Learning continues to always learn from events such as the Colonial Pipeline event that happened just a couple months. We continue to build on partnerships, as I comment a little bit earlier, to really continue to strengthen. It is certainly a developing field, I think, for the entire industry, and something that we all need to have to continue to have a learner mindset, and be able to take it to much higher levels to continue to protect our energy system.
That's fantastic. We have two related questions that kind of go back to our discussion earlier about the workforce. And they would love to hear from our panel today about what is it like being a woman in the energy industry? How do we build a better pipeline for women leaders? And then kind of a similar question, but just more general to how can your companies help open the doors to jobs in the energy industry for Latinos and Latinas everywhere? So Myra, I'd love to start with you.
Yeah, I love to start with this question as well. There is so much. I'm really proud of, working for Exelon and specifically for PICO. We have concerted efforts to ensure that there's, equity across the board. Latinos is particularly of interest to me and our leadership team, and we have a number of programs that encourage, the attracting and retaining Latino talent, and also looking at succession planning and talent development, and how do we get more Latinos and Latinas to positions of leadership is a concerted effort that requires, big commitment by leadership to make sure that their numbers look at as a minimum in par with the communities that we serve, but if not, exceeding the number of Latinos that we have at Exelon. So there is a lot of effort to ensure that talent not only comes into the door, but also feels included and welcome in this culture and this environment, and remains with us for the foreseeable future. So I am just very proud of working for a company that is thinking in that way, and that is investing time and effort and dollars to make that a reality.
That's great. Amy, any thoughts from you on the same question?
Absolutely. I would echo the sentiments already said. I'm very proud to be a part of the energy sector. I'm very proud to be a woman representing the energy sector. I'm proud to be a Latina representing the energy sector. API has had such a strong commitment to making sure that we are bringing more diversity, more inclusion into the industry, and also highlighting that there is already a lot of diversity in our workforce. There are great paying jobs, great ladders of opportunity, and we are making sure that people are seeing that. API has established great relationships with Hispanic serving institutions and historically Black colleges and universities, making sure that we are educating those communities about the jobs in our workforce. In the next couple of decades, there's going to be a large transition in our employee and our workforce who are going to go into retirement. And these are great jobs that are going to be vacant. And so we want to make sure that we're moving the workforce up these ladders of opportunities, that communities of color are benefiting, that they know about these jobs. We are working with our partners in the industry. Internally, API created and established, it's called the Energy Action Alliance. And it's working with our community partners to make sure that we're building and educating a skilled workforce, promoting STEM education, and creating pipelines for communities of color and for females.
Thanks so much. Aura, I noticed in your bio, you're not only a woman in the energy field, you're also a woman in the engineering field, and you've kind of broken a lot of those molds there. So I'd love to hear more about your experiences and any thoughts on pathways for others coming behind.
Certainly. So first of all, I also echo being so proud of being a Latin woman in this industry. It is a fascinating industry, and I'm proud to be part of it. I will share that I am very grateful for the opportunities that my company Shell has provided for me, but also for many of our members of our community. Really, Shell puts a lot of effort on making sure our workforce reflects the community where we operate, making sure that leaders such as myself are held accountable for developing and progressing diverse talent, and to make sure that we have an environment of inclusiveness where everybody feels they can thrive. And I think those elements have really made a big difference in my career, being able to take on a variety of different assignments and opportunities that have only been doors being opened that led me to bigger roles. I would say, as Latin women in our industry, one of the major roles that we play is being a role model. I still remember to this day when my first year in college, going to refinery on a field trip from the science club, and the tour was given by the technology manager, a woman. And I tell you, that day changed my life, because I was introduced to an industry I had never even really considered to or ever dreamed to be part of. So I think that role modeling that we all do as individuals, coupled with really being aligned and influencing the positions of each of our companies to be inclusive, is one of the things that we need to continue to do to support the Latin community and the whole diversity of our country.
Fantastic. Thanks for sharing that story from your past. I love it. And that was the fun part of our conversation. I'm gonna sort of end our Q&A session with something that's a little more on the political policy end of things. We have folks in our audience who want to know, what is the industry doing to work with the Biden administration in terms of their climate agenda? So Amy, I will start with you.
Absolutely. So I would say, as recently, we're constantly working with the Biden administration. We are working with our partners in Congress and throughout the various agencies. We have actually just had the White House came and presented to API member companies just a couple months ago. And we were very excited to see that when the climate advisor showed up, they had our climate action framework in hand. And we're very proud to see that the industry is leading the effort to meet climate goals. And so we're working together. Obviously, sometimes we'll see eye to eye, sometimes we'll have difference of opinions, and we are working through some of those challenges where, we want to make sure that the industry perspective is being considered. We want to meet the same goals. We want to get to a carbon reduction in our future, but we want to make sure that we're doing it smartly and that we're not putting our companies in a position that they can't get to, or that, metrics that they can actually reach in a realistic time frame. So we're working closely with them. We engage with them daily, regularly, weekly, and we're happy to continue those conversations.
Thank you so much. Myra, same question.
Yeah, for us is definitely working with the Biden administration at the excellent level, but for PICO is more of the state and local level. I mean, it's the same type of engagement that Amy described, as in partnership with policymakers, making sure that we are taking the steps that are necessary to achieve that clean energy future. And it's conversations, it's technology sessions, is collaboration sessions where we can get to common goals. And I would say it's the same model, just at the more local level for the utilities.
That sounds good. And our thoughts on working at the federal level with the administration on climate?
So absolutely. And I think, as I shared before, open dialogue and collaboration with all members of society and at the heart our government is essential. So Shell is very engaged in all topics related to our energy transition. And we collaborate in a number of forums, in consultation, in just a very large variety of ways, similar to what Amy and Myra shared.
Yeah, and actually a follow-up, we have one last question about the global experience. So how it's Shell obviously being a global company, what can we learn from operations, that are happening elsewhere, I guess, in the world, and how does that kind of affect, what we're thinking about domestically?
Absolutely. So Shell is certainly a global company. All our lines of business are organized at a global level, but we obviously have also very much country level connects. And what that matrix of organization really allows us to leverage technology, resources, best practices from all parts of the world, and being able to implement it, always being mindful of the local context. Part of we spoke about leadership development, is making sure that leaders move around and are able to gain a skill set that they can bring back to their home country to be able to share. I myself came back from being an assignment in the Netherlands. And a lot of what we try to do is to make sure that we always stay connected, being able to bring the best practice, not just within Shell, by the way, but really across the industry in a global basis, so that we can continue to be at the lead front of transitioning to a low carbon energy future.
Fantastic. So, Amy, I know you're the American Petroleum Institute, but is there any international collaboration that has informed kind of what your member companies are thinking about?
There are. So yes, we represent companies that are American-based, but they do have presence globally. Our companies have a presence all across the globe, but it's great to see U.S. energy companies, producers, natural gas producers leading the way in technology and innovation and leading the way in climate-friendly policies. We are doing it, obviously I'm biased, we are doing the best job at reaching climate goals, and we are doing the best job at producing cleaner energy. Other countries around the world, should look to how U.S. Companies are meeting certain standards and are reducing emissions, and we hope to see those other global partners achieve the same standards that our U.S. companies are currently actively doing.
Yeah, that makes sense. Since you're based in the Pennsylvania and Philly area, I might not ask the international question to you, Myra, but I think we can transition now to kind of panelists' closing statements. And so maybe I will start with you, Myra. Like, what are some final thoughts based on the conversation we've had today? The importance of technology, innovation, the importance of thinking through our equity considerations, workforce considerations, everything that is kind of wrapped up in how we transition to this low carbon energy future.
Sure. And after hearing, the conversation today, there really hasn't been a more exciting time to be part of the energy industry. So I think, climate change is real. We are feeling the effects of more severe weather events. We're seeing that every day. And we are committed to, through investment, through policy, through innovation, working with our communities and our customers to achieve that, path to clean that we established for ourselves. And I see a future of solar and electrification, and with, modernizing natural gas. I mean, there's a future for all of us to be, to arrive there fairly quickly. And I also think about, the future for the Latino community, as we're the second largest, actually first largest demographic and fastest growing demographic. I mean, there's a big future for Latino talent in energy, and I hope that both Latinas and Latinos, watching this, see themselves in jobs in energy, and decide to take a leap of faith and join us in the future.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. Amy, I would love to hear your final thoughts about this session and kind of where you see the future.
Absolutely. I'll echo, my colleagues on the panelists. It's an exciting time to be part of the energy sector. And, our top priority at API is safety, and whether that's operational safety, whether that's climate safety, it is our number one focus. And we are going to continue to innovate and to advance technologies to achieve goals. We're very excited to continue to grow our workforce in the Latino community. It's very exciting to see how many are joining the workforce now and really finding a path and a long-term career here. And I just think it's a great opportunity. The energy sector provides so many opportunities, and we are really leading the way to a carbon reduction, policies and a carbon reduced future, a green energy.
Thank you, Amy. And Aura, last but not least, we'd love to hear some closing thoughts from you.
Yeah, so as I share, Shell is absolutely committed to achieve our net zero emissions by 2050 or sooner in a step of society. And that will take very strong collaboration with all members of society, with our government, with our communities, with the industry, in order for us together to figure out the right policy frameworks, the right infrastructure, and the right build the right digital technologies advancements to be able to achieve this ambition, this essential ambition for us. I think as it relates to our people, I would like to echo what has been said, especially about the Latino community. It is a tremendous, exciting place to be part of, being part of energy transition. As a Latina woman, I would say there are so many opportunities for all of us to continue to contribute and to make a very meaningful contribution to our society.
Thank you all so much. This has been just such a joy to be on part of this conversation with you. We talked and covered a lot of issue areas, really, but I think what I take away from our panel, and I hope that our audience also does, is just the importance of thinking about continued innovation in energy technologies, how we address the challenges of climate change, both in the way that we provide energy services, but also in how we provide reliable and resilient energy services and equitable energy services. And so there's just so much excitement and continued work that really needs to happen to make sure that we have the correct policies in place, the correct infrastructure, financial incentives, things to help speed up this transition to really meet the challenge that we've all been talking about, and that is, recognized for us in transitioning to the low carbon energy systems. And so, just wanted to thank you again. This is such a rock star panel, and it's been really fun talking with you today. So, Amy Travieso Loving, Myra Bergman, and Aura Cuellar, thank you all so much. I have a couple of closing housekeeping items to share with our audience today. Please keep on tweeting about the conference. It is hashtag CHCIHHM21. And please do join us at 4 p.m. today for the CHCI Alumni Association Leadership Awards. Following that, there will be the virtual 44th Annual Awards Gala celebration. It's from 6:30 p.m. to 8 p.m. Eastern. And because you have registered for the conference, you are also automatically registered for the gala. So there's nothing you need to do more than just log back in and celebrate the rest of the time here. So that is it for me. I am Leslie Genterossimi from the Bipartisan Policy Center, and really thank you for joining us today.
Well, we've come to the end of our 2021 Leadership Conference. It's been an incredible 4 days. First and foremost, thank you to each and every one of you for taking the time to be with us throughout this week. We appreciate your participation, engagement, and support, and we hope that the discussions and comments and experiences have been informative and empowering. There's still so much work to do, but clearly, each of us is presente. We have the commitment, energy, and brilliance to lead the way, advancing our community and strengthening the nation. Thanks to all of our sponsors and partners for your unwavering support, especially our conference host sponsor, Facebook. And thank you so much to all of the speakers, panelists, moderators, and presenters whose contributions made all the difference. And it is absolutely critical that I share with you my appreciation for the CHCI staff, who, aided by a veritable army of consultants, contractors, and partners, performed the remarkable feat of making this entire week a success. If you know any of them, if you've interacted with them directly, please let them know what you thought of this conference. I am so deeply grateful for them, and I'm honored to be their colleague. And I'd like to say one more thing. As you know, CHCI's mission is to develop the next generation of Latino leaders through leadership programs that we implement year-round, as well as convenings like this one. And we are so thankful for the generous support of our corporate sponsors and partners. But if there's one thing that continues to be clear, it's that CHCI's work is more important than ever. We desperately need more Latinos, Latinas, and Latinx leaders in positions of power and influence so that our needs are not overlooked or ignored, so that our contributions to this country are properly recognized, and so that we all succeed together. But we can't do this work alone, and we can't grow our impact without your help and support. So please consider making a donation at chci.org/donate to support our important mission of advancing Latino leaders. Okay, now take a break this afternoon and get ready for our 44th Annual Awards Gala tonight. The festivities start with virtual doors opening at 6 p.m. Eastern, 3 p.m. Pacific Time. It will be a powerful evening, the culmination of our signature Hispanic Heritage Month events, and a celebration of how our community is presente, and we are leading the way. Make sure to tell your colleagues and friends they can still register for free by going to our website, chci.org. Everyone is welcome. Have a great afternoon. We're going to go get dressed up, and we'll see you in a little while.